Jeez Louise. Hey there. Just kind of messing around with it. Can you tell I'm excited for this marathon, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, it's Devil May Cry. How cool is that, right? You know, back in the PlayStation 2 era, there was nothing more action-packed. Believe it or not, Devil May Cry started out as a prototype for Resident Evil 4, but eventually the producers decided that it was a bit too action-oriented and decided to go their own way, which is funny looking at it now because Resident Evil 4 ended up being more action-packed and kind of more inspired by Devil May Cry, oddly enough. What can you do, though? Devil May Cry. Let's get this started, shall we? So, my own personal history begins with Devil May Cry when my now fiancée decided to try and get me into the series. She made me play the first one, second one, third one. We had the Devil May Cry HD collection for the PlayStation 3 at the time, but little did she know I actually ended up playing the game beforehand. See, the problem is that she kind of felt bad that she's been playing the first game for the longest time, and yeah, she wanted me to be stuck on it just like she did. And unfortunately, the part that she's stuck at, I blew past because, oops, I had a friend also need help with that part, and I figured it out for him. So, yeah, it didn't take me long. But, yeah, this is all going to be on the PlayStation 4, guys, because for some reason, every Devil May Cry game known to man is on the PlayStation 4. Either through the HD collection for the original 3 Devil May Cry, or the new and improved Devil May Cry 4, or DMC, which also got ported over to the PlayStation 4. With all the DLC, no less. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to play through all the games, including the DMC remake. Might take a pit stop to talk about the anime too, I'm not quite sure, but in the meantime, let's take on Mundus! So, let's get into the plot. The plot starts out with Dante chilling in his mercenary/demon hunting store, Devil May Cry. Okay, haha, very funny. Seriously though, Dante's just relaxing in his shop when Trish just comes out of nowhere and bursts through the doors. It turns out Dante is one of the twin sons of the legendary Dark Knight Sparta. No, not Batman, Sparta. Yeah, he's a demon who decided to turn on the other demons and save the world. And Dante is his half-demon kid. Dante's also half human, in case you were wondering. Trish hires Dante to stop the demon who actually killed his mother, Mundus. A few red flags, though, here. Why does Trish know that Mundus killed Dante's mom? I mean, she doesn't necessarily say it, he does, but what are the odds, right? And why does she look just like his mom? Okay, look. Yeah, the game doesn't hide that this is an obvious trap. From what I can tell, Mundus is stuck in hell, or the underworld, or wherever, and only Dante's necklace can free him. Of course, they need both parts, so they need, Virgil's necklace as well. I'll get into that in a sec. They lure him into a trap to either kill him and take his necklace, or just straight up have him set Mundus free while Dante tries and kills him. Either way, the only person who apparently doesn't see this is Dante. Still, the overall plot isn't bad. Lots of details shown but not told, which is nice. Again, I'm going to go with Virgil here, but I'm also going to talk about Mallet Island. Mundus is sending demons there, and, there's a lot of character development, if you will, taking place on this particular island. You can kind of look back and see what the island was going through before Mundus just had everyone killed. And the drama between Dante and Virgil is definitely nice. You can kind of see the brotherly bond that they have, but you can also see that they've been kind of at odds in the past too. But Dante does reminisce, and he reminisces about his mother a lot. This is almost like a tale of a kid accepting his mother's death, or a teenager, I guess you could say.
But, you know, Dante's just completely over the top and action-packed. Trish actually looking like Dante's mother kind of affects him that way too. See? Love is blind. And that's the reason Dante walks into an obvious trap, I'm sure. But speaking of character development, let's talk about that for a second, shall we? While talking about characters, let's start with Dante. I know it doesn't show pizza in this game, but he's known for eating it in a lot of the future games and in the anime. I guess he ate so damn much by this point, he just became the cheese. I mean, listen to this line towards the end of the game.
I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
All cheese aside, there is a foundation, or a crust, if you will, to this character. Thinking of his mother a lot since, well, Mundus killed her in the past, and finding out his twin brother is alive and here as well, Dante does have a great connection to some of the characters, particularly Trish, whom Dante wants to trust due to her resemblance of his mother. And Mundus totally did this on purpose. Due to this, Trish actually feels guilty for tricking Dante, since after she tries to kill him in a boss fight, he literally saves her life. She eventually does the same and straight up betrays Mundus and joins Dante in Devil May Cry, now named Devil's Never Cry, because you can't have a pizza without melted freaking cheese. Though maybe you can, we will see in the next game. You know what? I'm hungry. Give me just a second here.
Alright, let's get back to it.
Yeah, so Dante and Trish are definitely main components of the characterization in the story. But, you know, Nello Angelo, or as he's known later on, Virgil, because I spoiled that right away, yeah, he gets kind of some character development too. He has feelings and sentiments here for Dante and their mother. So it's not just a one-sided pony on that one either. And Mundus likes to talk with his serious god complex. Reference to the devil and some demons being fallen angels, I suppose. Also, there are two other boss fights that really like to talk to you. There's this giant bird and... Spider! Kill it! Kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it! Thank goodness I get paid for every demon I kill. Whew. That's kind of terrifying. Anyway, the bosses usually mostly mock Dante about whether they think he feels like Sparta or is just not living up to Sparta's expectations. You know, world building. That's what it is. But speaking of gathering orbs after you kill demons, let's talk about the gameplay real quick, because that's a big part of it. So, as I stated before, in gameplay you can slay demons for red orbs, which you can use to buy upgrades for certain weapons, or items to help with Devil Trigger. Think God of War or Bayonetta, though Devil May Cry actually predates these other games. It's a third-person action-adventure game. Dante has different fighting styles depending on the weapon equipped, though Alistair, the first sword you find, is easily the best weapon in the game, bar none. But more on that in a sec. The first sword you actually have is the one that you are just start out with, which is called Force Edge. And it's an alright starting sword. It's a bit slow and a bit weak, but it gets the job done. Your final sword, which is what Force Edge turns into, called Sparta, just named after Dante's dad himself, this sword is quicker and stronger than any sword in the game. But there's a problem. Both of these weapons, as far as I know, lack Devil Trigger, Dante's demonic transformation. Sparta's great in the vanilla sense of it, but without Devil Trigger or some of the movement upgrades, it just lacks in the compared to the other swords. Now, that being said, there is an actual Devil Trigger for Sparta, but you only get it at the last final boss fight of the game. That's it, really. And by that point in time, you're probably decked out one of the other weapons. Take Ifrit, a pair of fighting boxing gloves, or fire boxing gloves, I guess. You need it to light one torch in the game to open a frickin' door. They're powerful and strong, but the windup is so damn slow and even more close range than normal, outside of a fireball attack you get in Devil Trigger, that I didn't bother with. Honestly, I didn't use this much since I already had Alistair. Alistair is the best weapon in the game, and it's the first weapon you find, not counting the sword that you just start out with. The way you get it's kind of cool too, although... Gooey. Anyway, you get great movement upgrades from Alistair, which includes a double jump you don't need a wall for, flight from Devil Trigger, and honestly, the sword itself attacks really fast. It doesn't do as much damage as, say, Ifrit or even Sparta on a single attack, but it does so much damage per strike, and you do so many strikes per second, I suppose, that, yeah, eventually you just end up doing more damage with Alistair regardless. This weapon is so good they actually have enemies specifically designed to restrain the damn thing. The only issue I have with the gameplay is actually the camera, or lack thereof camera movement, but that's only in specific locations, so I guess we're heading right into level design with this one. And oh boy, do I have some things to say here. So, since I brought it up, let's start with the bad. Each level has a fixed camera. Now, a fixed camera is not necessarily the worst thing in the world by any means, but, yeah. Most of the time it's pretty good during particular boss fights, especially the spider named Phantom and Griffin the bird. This relic of Resident Evil can go to hell. You only fight Phantom twice, not counting the hallways where he chases you. And in that first fight, the camera just sucks ass. It changes so often it's disorienting the player, and hell, even Dante himself can get turned around pretty easily with this crap. The problem is that you need to see the spider in order to avoid his attacks or even know what attacks are coming. And when the camera angle just randomly changes because you don't want to be too close to the damn thing, not just because he's a big creepy spider, but because close range combat with this thing is never a good idea, unless you know you can get a hit off on him. Guess what? Get too far away, the camera changes. Well, then you can't see his attacks at all. So, yeah, it becomes a pain unless the game decides that the spider needs to get stuck on one of the columns, in which case, yeah, then you can beat him. Griffin sucks too. He is hard to keep track of since he flies, and I swear the game glitched up here. I mean, come on, that was the second boss fight with him. And the other ones aren't all that great either. Unless you have him eat a crap ton of ammunition, this fight sucks. This also happens a tiny bit with the final fight with Nello Angelo. And while we're talking boss fights for a second, Nightmare can suck too since you need to combo light switches while he attacks you. And Dante kind of auto-targets the boss sometimes, rather than the walls that you need to attack just to be able to hurt the dang thing. Other than the final boss fight, most of these boss fights kind of suck. Nello Angelo isn't too bad. And the final fight with Phantom is fun for sure, but yeah, other than that, the bosses are the weakest part of this game. Before I go into too much detail with the final boss, however, let me talk about the enemies and stage layout. Other than a few cutscenes causing pot shots that you can't avoid because the enemy is right on you already attacking by the time you get out of the freaking cutscene, normally the regular enemies are fun to deal with and fight. They range from different abilities and attacks, making them really fun to face off with. And each uses a different strategy to deal with, meaning you have to change up the way you play, which is nice. It kind of challenges you to think outside the box. However, it's very odd that missions just kind of abruptly end. You know, like, you could just be walking through a door only to have the mission end. Like, oh yeah, by the way, that door was the mission. Congratulations. It isn't like you can't visit previous areas some of the times, but it's just kind of an odd pace breaker. It's just like sudden, very sudden. And it isn't a bad thing per se because, you know, oh hey, now you can save the game. Now you can go buy some upgrades, you know. But yeah, it's weird, especially since 2 missions later, you're going back to the same freaking area in the first place with a new key. It's bizarre. But let's get into the final boss for a second. I'm not sure what the hell to think about this. It isn't a bad boss fight, but it kind of shifts gameplay where you suddenly end up in a 3D bullet hell. Something akin to Sin and Punishment. Not that I've ever played it, but I've seen enough. Honestly, this never shows up until the final boss fight, and maybe a segment afterwards, but that's it. And it's kind of jarring to say the least. Heck, sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out what the heck to do during the final boss fight, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, you know, pattern recognition and all. It's kind of akin to a Super NES boss, but, you know, 3D. But, yeah, as long as you keep using Devil Trigger, there you go. Although, this is when Sparta actually has a Devil Trigger, and it's basically Alistair's Devil Trigger. Now, wait a minute here. You get all of Alistair's abilities all of a sudden, but with Sparta, the better weapon? Proving Alistair is once again the definitive weapon of the game. Bar none. There you go. There's your proof. It's not bad level design. But it kind of can get dull because most of the levels you come across, and even most of the missions, take place within the castle. The garden and the Colosseum are a nice change of scenery, and the underworld looks okay, but again, most of it is just new forms of the main castle, which can get kind of old. Matched with all the other issues, the level design is easily the low point of the first game. But hey, that means secrets and side quests is really good, right? Yeah, totally! Actually, despite my earlier sarcasm, there's a lot to do in this game. It's not all stuff that I prefer to do, no, but there's a decent chunk here. There's plenty to find and do in Devil May Cry. For starters, while killing demons gives you red orbs, you can also get yellow and blue orbs for exploration. Or you can buy them, but you know. Yellow orbs are like lives, more or less. If you have them, you don't have to restart the entire mission just to get to a certain point. You can just start at the last checkpoint. Blue orbs actually add health, although most of the time you're fighting blue orb fragments and not full-on blue orb. You can buy both of these in the upgrades menu with red orbs, using your red orbs, but they get expensive quick, so it's nice to find them when you can. You can also upgrade how long your Devil Trigger lasts with purple orbs. Again, something you can buy, but also gets really expensive. Not only can you find orbs, but you can find guns. See, swords you have to have in the main story, but guns are completely optional. Thankfully, they're not all that hard to spot. You start out with pistols, ebony, and ivory, and while they're fast, that's about all they got going for them in this game. You can get a shotgun for close-range combat, a nightmare prototype which bounces off walls to hit enemies multiple times, but costs some Devil Trigger power, or magic, to use, making it less worthwhile, but definitely fun. And then you have the grenade launcher, which you actually get before the nightmare prototype, but it's just a better gun in general. It hits for high amounts of damage, it is definitely long range, and every time you make a successful hit with the dang thing, it builds your Devil Trigger meter or magic meter. So yeah, you get enough pot shots with this dang thing, and you can just spam Devil Trigger if you're low on health and low on healing items. See, the game's not all that hard. Honestly, the grenade launcher is amazing. It hits harder, it's slightly slow, but that's still a far cry. I mean, it does enough damage to where it actually builds up your combo. Oh, there's also the needle gun, which... yeah, that's right. There's swimming sections in this game. They're brief. There's a little underwater cavern that you end up in, and a boat that you kind of find. You fight Griffin on the dang thing, and you know how I feel about that bird. But, yeah, swimming isn't great. It's very forgettable. You don't do it often, thank goodness. Also, another thing that you get is when you beat the game in normal mode, you unlock hard mode. Which beating hard mode gives you a really cool costume, a new sword to work with, and Dante Must Die mode, in which I hear enemies have devil triggers, and beating that game mode gives you a costume with unlimited devil trigger to mess around with. I didn't necessarily do this, but it's nice that the game actually rewards you for actually playing the harder versions of the game. Also, hard mode enemy placement is completely different, making the game feel a bit more unique. So it's not just the same thing, but with, you know, less health for you and more health for your enemies or some crap like that. It's a nice touch that makes it feel a bit more unique. It's nice. So let's wrap this up, shall we? So, after talking about what makes the game, can I recommend Devil May Cry to, you know, regular people? Or maybe even fans of the series who just haven't gotten around to playing the first game yet. Honestly, I think the game is great. I don't think the camera holds up well, and the game likes to make moments where you can't avoid taking damage, but overall there's plenty to find, explore, kill. Though I do think the bosses are some of the low points of the game. The rest of the enemies, the pot shots, I can ignore them. They're not too awfully numerous moments in the game. If you're the type of guy who just really loves boss fights, or the type of girl, you know, I don't judge, this game might not be for you. I would honestly try some of the other games in the series. Still, if you like hack and slash games and action games, but you haven't played this, then I highly recommend you check it out. Gameplay is solid, as you can pick and choose how you play. The enemies are varied enough to challenge you and keep things interesting. Upgrades and guns are fun to find and collect, and hell, even the character development is interesting since you get to talk to the bosses, and yeah, it kind of puts a personality on crap that you need to kill. Plus, the main characters, yeah, you get a little bit of a light taste of mozzarella after some of their lines, but they're still pretty good. They develop. World building's great. I think the game is worth a look, even now. For those of you who are wondering if I'm going to talk about difficulty, however, well, I hate to tell you, I actually didn't find the game all that tough. Even with the issues I had, I didn't find the game was just a ball buster on normal mode. I'm not saying normal mode is super easy, mind you, but as long as you know kind of the basics of hack and slash third-person games, then it's pretty manageable. But it can be annoying at times when learning patterns, like Mega Man X, another Capcom series. But super hard? Nah. That's where the harder modes come into play. If you want ball-busting challenge, Devil May Cry won't appease you at first. But you have hard and Dante Must Die modes. That might be what you're looking for most. And you get stuff for it, so I mean it is worth looking into those modes. Overall, I think most people will like the game. The difficulty varies, especially if you were spoiled with better camera system, but I think outside of the bosses, the difficulty progresses just fine for newcomers to the series. Try it out when you get a chance, maybe on the HD collection for the PlayStation 4, which is where I'm playing it at, actually. You can get it along with Devil May Cry 2 and, honestly, Devil May Cry 3. I'm looking at Devil May Cry 2 next, of course, but you know, that's beside the point. I think I pulled your ear long enough, though. Mundus is dead, and it is time to find a new target. I'll see everyone when, assuming you subscribed and hit the bell button, I get to my next adventure. Until then, Adios, my minions.